everybody, and welcome to Generally Speaking, the podcast that bridges the worlds of pop culture and personal development. I'm your host, Jennifer Snook. I am so happy to be here with you guys today. I hope everything has been going well in your world. Well, you guys, it may be the holidays, but I'm telling you, it is hot as balls in LA. The rest of the country, I know, is in this cold snap, but we are sitting here in a full-blown hot pocket. I mean, it is hot. Speaking of the holidays, I have not started an ounce of shopping. Have you? You guys are probably all done. I talked to so many people they were like, oh, I was done in October. Well, I haven't started. I haven't started an ounce. I haven't, honestly. That all starts next week for me. Our 901 Christmas party is happening this Friday down in Hollywood, and I'm very excited about that. The whole salon is very much in the Christmas vibe, and we have just been loving it. Oh, actually, you know what? That is not true. I said that I have not started my shop. Well, I have not technically started my shopping, but I did ask my daughter Taylor what is on her list this year. So, I mean, I feel like once you ask the question, you're like officially in the game. So I think my game has officially started, but I am off to like the slowest start. Anyway, you guys, it's time for us to talk about what everyone else is talking about. So do you guys remember the video and all of those rumors that came out towards the end of BravoCon about Tom Sandoval and his girlfriend getting into a brawl or little argument with Lindsay Hubbard? Well, come to find out, we've got the real deets on that now. And the fight that was actually taking place was between Sandoval and Victoria. And it was Lindsay that was kind of trying to tell them, you know, like, pull your heads out of your asses, you guys. You're at BravoCon, get it together. There are people watching you, kind of like playing the mother and making sure that it didn't escalate. There really was no beef between the three of them. There was just the beef between the two of them. And we found this all out because Kristen Doute was breaking down all this drama with Britney Cartwright over on her podcast. Speaking of Kristen, I told you we were having our 901 Christmas party, and that little angel is supposed to be there. So I'm going to see if I can get any additional deets from her. I'm telling you, Kristen is hilarious. She is so fun to be at a party with. And it's hilarious because I used to have very strong opinions about Kristen Doute until I met her. I mean, very strong opinions. I really did. I mean, I was not a fan. And then I ended up meeting her at Rihanna and Morgan's engagement party. I want to say like 6 years ago, maybe now. She comes in at the salon. She's friends with my daughter, Carly. Speaking of my daughter, Carly, you guys, she flew in from Austin. She was here for not even 48 hours. But she came over to the house and we recorded a bonus pod, you guys, a question and answer bonus pod that I'm going to be releasing over the holiday break. We had such a good time. We had so much fun. Thanks, Car. Speaking of the holidays, you guys, Jen Shah is officially out of the slammer and home for the holidays. Even though she's still on probation, that won't end until August 26th. And it was weird, you know, they shot that video. They released video of her being released and meeting her family. And the headline was, you know, Jen Shah, you know, is reunited with her family. But I watched the video. I didn't see anyone I recognized. Did you? I mean, honestly, were they paid actors? Like, I don't know who those people were. I mean, I didn't recognize her sons. Did you? I mean, I didn't recognize her sons. I didn't see Coach. I think I saw her mother. I think her mother was there, but I don't know. The whole thing was just weird. And then this week, you guys, Melissa Gorga told the world that her and the fam are having Christmas with Teresa and her family. She says they are getting together without the cameras, and even though she knows that it would make great TV and that people would love to see it, she says that they really need this time away from the cameras, and I fully get that. You guys, so the Vanderpump Rules premiere happened last week, and there was an 80% drop in ratings, right? But drop in what? We can't compare the premiere of this Vanderpump to the previous Vanderpump. I mean, they're completely different animals. And I think it's fully unfair to now make everyone think that this Vanderpump Rules is doing so horrible compared to the other Vanderpump Rules. I mean, I just really don't think it's fair for them to try and compare the two shows. I mean, they're just so completely different. This thing is like a little baby just learning how to walk. You cannot compare it to that well-oiled beast that was going full speed ahead for so many years. And honestly, you guys, just because they say that the ratings are down compared to the old Vanderpump, that doesn't mean that you don't watch the show, because I'm telling you, it is good. I think that it has legs. I think that it has a lot of potential. Don't give up on it yet. And this week, little Miss Molly from Southern Charm talked about her short-lived relationship with Shep. She says that it was short but sweet, and even though they were well matched on paper, ultimately they were best suited for a good time and not a long time. Tamra Judge just said that she's worried about the future of the Real Housewives of Orange County because of the fact that Shannon Beador holds such grudges. She says she thinks that Shannon's grudges will stall the momentum of the show. And I mean, honestly, I don't think she's wrong. I mean, and momentum matters. And finally, you guys, we have an answer for Brandi Glanville's facial disfigurement. I mean, finally, after all of this time, after all of those doctors, after all of the specialists, after all of the tests, we finally have an answer. But she's not going to tell us. She's not going to tell us. She hasn't told us yet. She says, thank God, I'm so excited. I finally have the answer. She says that her mother broke down in tears. She's making it out like they really do have concrete, conclusive answers and answers that are going to open up her future, right? Something that, you know, she finally has hope once again. But she's not telling us. She's keeping us all in suspense. She's probably going to put it behind a paywall because we all know she's desperate for money. And honestly, I really do hope that she's figured it out. I really do hope that she has, because the poor girl was just in agony. So horrible for her and her family to go through. And then Bronwyn said that she thinks that Meredith should be the one that's benched next season, simply because of the fact that she really didn't bring much to this season. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, most of her co-stars agreed. And then there's Rachel Zoe, who said that she thinks that PK and Mauricio's dating life is disgusting. And speaking of Mauricio's dating life, he was just photographed with Alexia Napola and Julia Lemagova in Miami. And remember, this is just a couple days after Alexia made the statement saying that she thought that Mauricio looked really good in his Esquire spread. And then apparently he responded like he only dates younger women or something like that. So anyway, I don't know. Interesting, and we will see. All right, you guys, it is time for our reality check. And we are starting this episode off with a big oppa because the girls are going to Greece. The show starts out with Heather and Mary actually going over to Angie's house so that they can get a Greek lesson by the city's most Greek people, Angie's dad and aunt. And I mean, Greek isn't easy, you guys. Did you hear that? I mean, like one word is like, sounds like a whole sentence. Then the girls arrive at the airport. Angie is literally dressed like the Greek flag for her travel day, but I mean, not surprising. She says she could literally not be more excited to be going to Greece with the girls, which is exactly the opposite of how Lisa is feeling. She's praying that after this trip, she's never going to have to hear the word Greece again. Then they land, they hop in a van, and they head straight to dinner. This was a long travel, you guys. I mean, they were on the road, or in the air on the road for days. On the way, Heather hits up the driver, Nico, and asks him if he has any hot friends. And then they get to the most gorgeous restaurant right on the water called the Beefeater, I think. As soon as they sit down, Angie raises a glass of local sangria, and she tells the girls that her parents were born here, so it's just so special that she gets to share this with the rest of them. She says this is absolutely a dream come true. She tells them all that it's going to strengthen their friendship. And then she tells them, she says, and you know, I want you all to know that I do consider you all friends. Meredith turns and says, you know, I'm so glad that we get to rest tomorrow. And Angie says, well, you know, everyone is exhausted. We have been traveling for 2 days. And then for good measure, she tosses in, well, good thing I got my bags under my eyes done. And Lisa goes, you what? And she goes, yeah, I got the fat scraped out from underneath. They take these little chopsticks and then they smooth it out. Meredith says, I really like to stick to Botox. I'm really not a filler girl. And Heather says, well, I think everyone should get all the Botox and all the filler they want. All they want, all the time. Then Angie says to Heather, hey, what time is it? And Heather pulls her sleeve back and goes, it's about that time. Britney says, Heather, let me see your watch. And then Heather says, Lisa, I have something to tell you. I bought a Cartier. And Lisa goes, good, I'm happy for you. Then to camera, Heather says, during our layover, Lisa and Angie got into it over Angie's Cartier watch. And Lisa accused Angie of copying her. Lisa only thinks something is special if she has it. She says they were literally fighting so much about this Cartier watch, and it seemed like such a big deal that when I then went downstairs and saw the Cartier duty free, I just had to go in and I inquired about how much a Cartier was. She goes, because honestly, I didn't even know. She goes, and because of the fact that I could get it in duty free, I basically got 2 for the price of 1. So I gave 1 to Whitney too. And then Mary says, Cartier? Really? I can't believe they're arguing about Cartier. I mean, that's a grandma watch. But I mean, none of us are spring chickens, so I get it. Angie says, it's not a competition. We're happy for you and you should be happy for them. And no one's copying, but you do that, Lisa. You say that someone only gets something because you had it first. Angie says, I had a Cartier before my daughter was even born, but you're trying to make it out like I'm copying you? And Lisa says, well, I've had one for like 4 or 5 years. And Angie says, well, show me a picture. Lisa says, you show me a picture. She says, I will. I have one. I have a picture on Facebook. And lo and behold, then we see the picture of Angie on Facebook with her Cartier. Lisa says, this is kind of ridiculous, right? Angie says, what's ridiculous is your snobbiness. And Lisa says, I'm not snobby. Angie says, you are. You think you're the only one that can afford things. But I've had my Cartier for so long. And to camera, Bronwyn is cracking up and she says, this is exactly the level of petty that I live for. Angie says, I had mine first. I had my Rolex first. I had my Porsche first. Lisa says, I've had my Porsche forever. Angie says, well, I've had 5 Porsches. Lisa says, well, I'm on 4. And Angie says, well, I'm one up on you then. Lisa says, it's not a competition. And mine's a 2025. And I'm the first one that got this color in this state. Oh, what? To camera, Lisa says, Angie is the most jealous and competitive person. She says, it's unhealthy. It's going to take years off her life. First, it's the watches and the cars. She says, I don't even know what you drove, but you knew what I drove when you were watching me on TV. Then the girls all go back to their big, beautiful villa. And when they wake up the next morning, oh my God, you guys, the view that we finally get to see, it could not be more gorgeous. That Grecian coastline is a sight. When the girls walk out to the patio, they find Lisa Barlow out there getting all glammed up because, you know, Lisa needs to get her glam done every single day. Lisa says it's not an option to go on a trip without glam. I mean, why waste a day being ugly? She looks at Angie and says, wow, you really did your makeup good. And Angie says, Lisa, I haven't even done my makeup. Then Heather's face starts looking annoyed and she says, you know, Britney may have forgiven Meredith, but I haven't. I really feel hurt and disappointed because when we were walking off that plane, Meredith made it very clear that if I was going to continue to be friends with Britney, then she and I were done. And she won't even admit that. And I'm not going to let her forget about calling me a liar. Then the girls all start to get ready to go down to the beach club. They all load into the van. And while they're driving, Meredith very discreetly leans over to Heather and tells her that she wants to talk to her when she gets a minute. Meredith says she's looking to have some sort of resolve, but Heather's really not giving it to me, and it's making me uncomfortable. Then the girls get to where they're going. They grab their drinks. They cop a squat in the cabana and settle in for some fun. Angie puts on her bucket hat, and when she walks over to the girls, Mary says, oh, Angie, no. I got to tell you, that Greek hat, not going to lie, that hat really throws the whole outfit off. And Angie says, oh, I know. I'm just going to take it off. I just wanted to have a moment. Then Mary says, Bronwyn, let me see your face shape. Take off your hat. You see, you've got a bucket face shape. You've got that bucket face shape. And everybody starts to giggle. She goes, Heather, you've got one too. She goes, but it's okay. She goes, but because bucket face people, she says, they're really intelligent. You know, truthfully, yeah, they're really intelligent because they take a lot of information in. And then to camera, Mary completely seriously says, so there's an oblong face. She says there's a pie face. There's square shaped face. She goes, those are the dingbats. She goes, so just know that if you've got a square shaped face, well, you're a dingbat. Then they head up to the restaurant and eat. And oh my God, the food looked amazing. Angie asked them all at the table what they think of the Greek men. Heather says, well, I like the way the guy looked out on that pink flamingo. And then Angie says, well, what about you, Bronwyn? Are you going to get a number 2 while you're here? And I'm thinking like a number 2? What the fuck is she ordering? A Big Mac? Angie goes on to say, well, you have kind of thrown out that you're looking into maybe opening your marriage. And Bronwyn says, I did not say that I was looking into it. Angie says, well, yeah, you did. And she says, no, not at all. She says, Todd and I are not in an open marriage. He's happy and that's fine. Heather says, well, you sound very matter-of-fact about it. And she says, well, I am. And then to camera, Heather says, I really don't get how this is. She goes, because the last thing I heard about Todd was that he was looking at a bunch of lingerie-clad women that were definitely not Bronwyn. And then on top of it, he was sleeping at a hotel. Whitney says, I really don't understand what's real because she told us she was in trouble and now everything's peachy keen. She says, Bronwyn, you can't pretend like you don't know what Heather's saying. And she says, oh, I know what Heather's saying. She says, but I just can't believe that I was so vulnerable with you guys and came to you so honestly. And now I'm needing to explain to you guys the decisions that we came to in our home. And Heather says, all I want to know is whether Lisa Barlow is going to hook up with a handsome Greek. And Lisa says, John is Russian, German, and Jew. So I'll stick to that. Then the girls all get back from lunch and right away they need to start getting ready for dinner. And then we see Heather making her way to Mary's room. And when she turns around and shuts the door and she says, I have to shut the door for this combo, Mary. Mary goes, uh-oh, what's up? Heather says, I don't really know what's going on with Meredith. We had the best relationship. And it really just blows my mind that she can make these mean little comments and call me a liar and not even really apologize or even try to make it right. And then she expects me to move forward and move on like nothing ever happened. She says, and Meredith pulled me aside. She tried to talk to me, but I'm really not interested in one of these one-on-ones where she tries to twist it all up and turn it around and make it into something else. No, thank you. And she says, and she doesn't realize that by not engaging, she's really being disrespectful to our entire relationship. And Mary says, well, tell her. Tell her to her face. And Heather says, I can't because everything I say to her, she takes as a personal attack. So I have to just leave it there and then never bring it up again. Then to camera, Mary says, I was raised to be honest, but these women aren't even capable of being able to say what they truly feel because they worry too much about things that don't matter, like other people's feelings. And then she goes, oh, did I just say that? Oh my God, I can't believe it just flew out of my mouth. Heather says, well, we'll see. Here's hoping dinner is incredible. Then Heather, Whitney, Bronwyn, and Angie all gather in the lobby to head into town. They're walking past Lisa's room when they see her in there still getting all glammed up from her Grecian glam team. Lisa is way more concerned with getting her glam right than she is about being on time. The girls all decide they're not going to wait for Lisa and they all head off. They're walking into town and they are not on the road for more than a minute before Whitney fully eats shit on a gravel road and almost slides down a hillside. Britney and a passerby pick her up and then they all continue on into the heart of Santorini, you guys. And the women are just mesmerized when they see that iconic coastline at sunset, and who can blame them? I mean, holy shit, it is breathtaking. Meanwhile, you see Lisa, who's finally done getting glam, doing that same hike that the girls did, except Lisa's doing it all alone. And then while the girls are in a dress shop, Meredith shows up out of nowhere, and Mary says to her, is everything okay with you and Heather? And Meredith says, well, I've tried to talk to her numerous times, but she's just not making any time to talk to me. So now all the gang's back together, right? They're up in these shops overlooking that gorgeous view. They're going to leave these shops and head over to the restaurant. And while they're walking, Angie says, isn't this just so weird? We've been gone from Lisa for 3 hours and she just shows up and now it's nighttime and she's wearing sunglasses. Before Meredith walks out of the dress shop, she sees a little evil eye necklace and picks it up as a peace offering for Heather. The girls then head out to this dinner and Meredith puts the bracelet on Heather's plate before she even sits down. And Heather sees it and she's like, what is this? And Meredith goes, oh, open it. And Mary says, it's a peace offering. And Bronwyn says, she's trying to make up with you. And Heather says, well, it's not going to work. Meredith looks at her and says, it's cute, right? And then to camera, Heather says, I feel like the woman who's been cheated on, whose husband is just buying her a bunch of gifts, hoping that she'll overlook it. She wants to just give me a gift and hope that things are going to go back to normal. Then the maitre d' comes up and he wraps each of the ladies in these little light blankets so they won't be cold. Angie looks at Lisa and says, look at these Greeks taking such good care of us. And Lisa says, I love it. And Angie says, well, there's a lot more to see tomorrow. So do you think you could possibly be on time? And Lisa says, yes, I can definitely be on time. Then Mary goes, Meredith and Heather gay. Are you guys okay? And Heather's like, she says, well, when I was opening my necklace, Bronwyn was saying that it was a peace offering. And Meredith says, look, you just seemed really tense with me. So I just thought I would get you a peace offering. And if you don't like it, don't wear it. Heather says, look, I'm not rejecting your gift. I'm just saying let's not cover up the actual issue with a gift. Let's actually talk about it. And Meredith says, well, I wasn't looking to do that with a group. I called you and I reached out to you again this morning. Then to camera, Meredith says she just wants to rile this group up again. And it's clear that she doesn't have any respect for our friendship. Then she looks back at her and she says, I am not going to address this with the group. I just can't. Heather says, well, you assassinated my character and like dejected our history. And she says, I did not. Heather says, yes, you did. And you questioned my loyalty. And then she looks to camera and says, I don't even know how to talk to people like this. I've never been in this situation where someone just stonewalls completely and just denies everything. Meredith says, I'm telling you that my feelings were hurt. And Heather says, well, my feelings were hurt too. And Meredith says, and I've apologized for that. And that's why I don't understand why we're even still talking about this. Heather says, well, I was very, very hurt by you calling me a liar. She says, I did not call you a liar. And then Lisa interjects and says, listen, people make mistakes in friendships all the time. You can't hold people to some crazy high standard that you don't even hold yourself to. It's exhausting. Lisa says, Heather, it's so crazy the way you always play Judge Judy in every situation. You're constantly doing it. And then Heather says, listen, Lisa, I'm just not being a yes man, okay? There's a huge problem and nobody wants to talk about it. And Lisa says, listen, you guys had a miss. And Heather says, no, we didn't. We did not have a miss. That'll piss me off. We did not have a miss. I ride hard for Meredith and I always have from day one. She says, when she brought up that TikTok, I completely defended her. But when she came in guns blazing the next morning, I was just like, listen, stop freaking out over this TikTok. You've had way bigger bombs placed in your lap and you've chose to ignore those. So why would you choose to annihilate your friendship with me and with Whitney and with Britney over something that's on TikTok? Heather looks at Meredith and says, you're selective about what you have outrage about. And Meredith says, well, I don't agree with you, but if you want to hold a grudge, hold a grudge. Lisa says, I can take the honesty. I mean, I know sometimes it's really hurtful, but the truth is, Heather, you're not the judge and jury. And then the camera pans to Whitney and she has tears running down her face. And she says, I think the bigger thing is that we're protecting something that actually happened. And then the tears really start to flow. And she says, I can just see it all so clearly. I'm watching my friends fight. And what you're all really fighting over is, well, Meredith, the way you treated Britney on that plane. She says, I don't know why you just can't be like, I'm sorry, I really fucked up. And Meredith says, I did that, Whitney. And then she looks at Britney and says, didn't I do that, Britney? Didn't we work things out? And then Britney's just looking at her almost terrified with this weird face. And she says to camera, she says, I decided to move past this. She says, but honestly, I agree with Whitney. She says, her and Heather both deserve an apology too. Whitney says, what clearly has happened here, Meredith, is that you fucked up, but the rest of us are all paying the price for it. And then to camera, Meredith says, Whitney has been the biggest pot stirrer since day one. She is the cause of every problem. She projects everything she does onto everyone else, over and over again. And we've always given her grace because she's always on some type of healing journey. And at this point, it's so obvious that she's just trying to discredit Whitney. And then Whitney looks at her and says, Meredith, I don't think you have a problem. I think you are the problem. And Meredith says, everyone at this table has done much worse. And then she stands up and says, excuse me. And then Lisa stands up and says, hold on. And then the two of them walk off together. And Heather says, well, obviously I'm in trouble right now because the two of them are just going to walk off and reframe everything that just happened. She says, and I'm going to be the one that ends up apologizing again. Mary says, Heather, you did what you could. And Heather says, well, I officially feel worse now than I did when I got here. And Bronwyn says, look, just because it wasn't received doesn't mean that you shouldn't have said it. Meanwhile, Whitney's at the end of the table going like this. And when Britney saw her, Britney cracked up, you guys. She choked up and cracked up. And I swear to God, did you see her face? In that moment was the very first time that I saw an ounce of actual humanity on Britney Bateman. And I am here for it. It was cute. It was engaging. It was authentic. It was honestly like the first time that she dropped that facade, and I am here for it. And Britney, if you could do a little more of that, that would be great. And you guys, the reunion has been officially shot, and my God, I cannot wait to see it. And the word on the street is that we might actually see some footage from what did go down on that plane. Apparently something has surfaced, and we're going to get to see it at the reunion, and I cannot wait. And then you guys, we are on episode 2 of the new Vanderpump Rules. The show opens with management mulling over what they're going to do with Marcus, the ding dong that was showing his coworkers how to get drunk on the job without anybody knowing. And we also find out that the 2 new guys, the cousins, have only been there for 3 weeks, which to me just absolutely screams casting, right? That was a casting job, not a true employee, hey, you want to be on the show sort of thing. They came specifically for the show, those 2 at least. Marcus meets up with his older brother and tells him about what went down at that staff meeting yesterday and how Lisa came in floating, looking like an angel, and then she turned and looked at him with this sour look on her face and then just lashed into him. But honestly, let's face it, he didn't get anything that he didn't deserve, honestly. Marcus goes on to tell his brother that he has a meeting scheduled with Lisa and that he's a little nervous because he doesn't really know what to expect. Then he tells his brother about what went down at the Belmont when Kimberly was acting all pissy about his friendship with Natalie. He tells his brother that Natalie really is like a little sister to him, but that Kimberly just doesn't understand that. The brother says, well, are you giving her enough reasons to feel secure? And he says, yeah, I think I'm doing a great job. We still have sex all the time. It's really good. He says, I do love her, but I just feel like at this point, I'd rather be peaceful and steady than to be in love and living my life like a maniac. Then we're over at Venus's house and Audrey's coming for a visit. She's actually coming for a lesson in manifestation, which you know is right up my alley. Speaking of manifestation, you guys, I don't know if I've ever told this story on here, but when I first moved to LA, you guys, when we first moved to LA, we were in our old house. It was literally the first morning that I was waking up there, and I happened to be waking up there alone, and I didn't have any coffee, and I was like, God, I really wish I had some coffee right now, and I just didn't have everything unpacked. This is a true story. I go to my front door to open it because I'm going to head to Starbucks, right? On my front porch, you guys, is a box. I open up the box, and it is a full-size Keurig, and inside the full-size Keurig is a full array of coffees. Now, I know what you might say. Someone sent you a housewarming present or something like this, but that's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. No one sent it. I didn't sign up for anything. I didn't win a raffle. It was absolutely the most random thing. There was nothing on the box. There were no tags, no tickets, no delivery directions. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. And honestly, truthfully, I manifest shit all the time. And when I look back on my life, I realize that I've manifested all of it. I truly have manifested the most incredible abundance in my life. I mean, I fully subscribe to it. It really is the secret. And Venus goes on and he explains it all to Audrey and she is loving it. They start talking about relationships and she says that her last one was about 8 months ago. She says she's dated women, she's dated men. She says her type is all over the place and that she loves falling in love, even though it hurts like a bitch when it doesn't work out. She asked him if he's talked to Marcus since he got kicked out of that staff meeting, and he says, yeah, I have. He said that he's really sad and he's actually really scared. But he says at the end of the day, he does, though, have a drinking problem, and so it's probably a good time that he got called out for this. He says, I really do love Marcus, but if they look back on those cameras, he'd be fired. Then the boys meet up at a local bar. When Marcus walks in, all the guys get up to greet him. And to camera, Marcus says, you know, I'm not really a friendly guy, but when Chris and Jason first got to SUR, they found a way to soften me up. He goes, which, you know, I guess it's just by complimenting me. They were like, oh, look at this handsome motherfucker. And I was just like, what? You got a friend in me. But clearly it didn't take very long to soften him up, because just a couple scenes before this, we learned that those 2 guys, the cousins, had only even been at SUR for 3 weeks. So it's clear that this is a very new friendship. Chris goes on to say that he's actually a pretty big partier and that nobody can hang with him except Marcus. Then Venus shows up looking like a smoke show and he says, listen, I dress up like this just to go to the store. I dress up like this to go to the laundromat, to go to the dentist's office, when I'm out on the streets, when I'm out in the club. The only time I don't dress up like this is when I'm filing my taxes, because the patriarchy doesn't deserve me at my best. Then the guys all put their drink orders in and Chris asks Marcus how things are going with Kim. And he says, you know, I can just be acting like your average bastard, but then she goes just off the Richter. He says, man, I'm telling you, when the sun goes down and the moon comes up, she turns into a Michael Jackson video. Then Marcus asked the cousins what their first thoughts were walking into Sir, and Jason was like, well, you were the first one that really came up and said what's up to me. And then he says, and then there was Venus who just like looked me dead in the eyes, and Venus says, well, I think that the eyes are the windows to the soul, so I like direct eye contact. And Jason goes, so are you bi or are you gay? And Venus says, I'm 100% gay. Just the thought of a vagina terrifies me. He says, I can never eat a kitty. Jason goes, terrifies you? What do you actually think of when you see a vagina? And he goes, honestly, I think of this predator versus alien type of thing. Then somebody asked Chris what was up with his love life. And he goes, dude, I'm not going to lie. Audrey's cool as fuck. I mean, we hung out last night. I'm 31, man, and she seems like the most mature girl there is around here. Then to camera, he says, the last girl I dated told me she loved me in like 3 weeks. And then she started making out with some other guy when we were out at a bar together. He says, Audrey doesn't seem like your typical LA girl. He goes, she's really spicy, but she's also really innocent and sweet. That's something that's hard to find here in LA. And then back at Sir, all the girls were working, and we see Guillermo give Demi some paperwork that Natalie needs to sign, a write-up for her bad behavior. Demi says, I really hate giving out write-ups, especially to my friends, but in this case, I'm actually looking forward to it. She looks all over the place for Natalie, but can't find her. And then 27 minutes later, Natalie finally reappears, and Demi says, where the hell have you been? I've been looking all over the place for you. I need you to sign this paper. Can you sign it, please? And then she says, no, I'm not going to sign that. She says, I'll sign that if Guillermo gives it to me. And then to camera, Natalie says, I just don't get why Demi is being so dramatic. I mean, this is ridiculous. Her and Kimberly, I mean, they're both acting like I fucked their dad. Then we're over at the cousins' pad, and Chris is FaceTiming with his dad. He's catching him up on everything that's been going down, including the fact that his cousin Jason got in a little bit of trouble at that staff meeting with Lisa. Chris goes on to say that he's a very family-oriented person. He says he has like 100 cousins, including Jason, obviously. He says that he started cursing at 8 years old because he's an Italian, and they're very passionate people. Chris says that if he was still living in Jersey, he'd probably be settled down with a girl, maybe have some kids by now. But he says he's here because he knows that he has what it takes to be a model and an actor. He says, what I really want to do is model for John Varvatos. I'm wearing John Varvatos right now. And I mean, for a male model from New Jersey, John Varvatos is goals. Chris goes on to say that he's 31 years old and he does want to get married someday. So he doesn't want to date someone just to date them. If he doesn't feel the spark, why waste anyone's time? Then Marcus shows up to Sir with roses in hand as a peace offering to Lisa. She says, oh, you really didn't have to do that. And he says, I know, but that last meeting really wasn't the best, and I wanted a chance to apologize for that. He says, I know I was really out of line. And she says, I'm just really wondering what's up with you, because you've been working here for 3 years and you know better than that. Then to camera, Lisa says, we've been doing everything that we can to keep this restaurant vibrant and successful. If Marcus thinks he's invincible at Sir, well, I'll tell you, he's got another thing coming, because there are a million out-of-work actors that are looking for a job. So don't push me. She says to Marcus, do you still even want this job? And he says, of course I do. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. She says, well, I've heard that you've been drinking a lot more than you used to. She says, what's happening with you? Because honestly, you look tired and you look thin and you look unhappy. And he says, oh, that's not good. And then he says, well, at the end of September, my mom passed away. And at the end of COVID, my dad passed away. And his eyes are just brimming over with tears. And he said, when my dad dies, I was devastated. He said, but I had my mom and my family, so it was sort of like a normal grieving process. He says, but now that I've lost my mom too, it just has me feeling so alone in the world. And then he looks to camera and he says, that chapter of my life when my parents were in it is just completely over. And this is a new version of my life. And now the only thing that I can do is live my life in a way that would make my parents proud. And while that is true, that doesn't mean that he is. Lisa says, listen, I want you to come back. I want you to have your job back, and I'm going to get you some grief counseling, and I need you to go. And he says, I will. I know I need some help. And I'm so happy. Thank you, Lisa. He says, because this job is really the only thing I have right now. And then it's Aubrey's big birthday, you guys. She is turning 22, and she is very excited to celebrate on a rooftop bar with her friends. She goes on to say that when she was 21, she was just arriving to LA and she was so broke that she didn't even have enough money to go out for a drink. So she's making up for lost time, and this is basically her 21st and 22nd birthday combined. This is the big one. We see her up in a suite getting ready with some of her friends, and then one of them asks them if there's any cute guys that are going to be here tonight. And Audrey says that she thinks she wants to spend some more time with Chris. And honestly, I have a very good feeling about those two. I really do. I think they could go the distance. She tells her friend that they went and had ice cream together, and she goes, and you know what going to ice cream equals. And they both go, marriage. And so yeah, marriage. And they'll probably get engaged at an ice cream shop and then have an ice cream bar at their wedding. I'm going to be naming their baby soon. And then we're at the Blonder, you guys, with Natalie and Venus. They're going to get all bronzed up for the big party. And you guys, that was the sweetest surprise. Did you see that spray tan artist was actually Sydney Keener, who used to work at 901 with us and whose big sister Sierra was one of our senior stylists for the longest time, until just recently, actually. I mean, did you see Sid? She is just gorgeous, and she is honestly just as sweet as she seemed. We love the Keener girls. Then all the gang arrived to the rooftop to get Audrey's party started. But right away, we feel the tension between Kimberly and Natalie, and everybody else can feel it too. And Natalie says, I just don't understand why she is so pissed off. And then Marcus, too, is fully in his feelings about this tension that everybody's feeling. And when he starts talking to Natalie about it, Kim walks over to Natalie and says, so do you want to go talk? And Natalie says, yeah, I would love to. I've been trying to talk to you. I was trying to talk to you earlier. So then the two of them go cop a squad away from the rest of them, and they start talking about the text messages that Natalie has apparently been sending Marcus. You know, the text messages that were apparently so inappropriate. And honestly, when those text messages came up the first time, I thought that what they were talking about was a picture of fuck me heels. But that wasn't it at all. It was nothing but a text that said, I finally bought some heels. I hope you're proud of me. I mean, big difference. And now at this point, Demi come over and join the conversation. And everybody's saying, well, Marcus told me this and Marcus told me that. And Venus says, well, Marcus and Kim make me feel like I'm in a constant psychosis. And Demi says, well, I'm just going to go get him so he can like clear this all up. And while she's going to get him, Venus says, you know, the truth is he tells people what they want to hear. He tells everybody something else depending on what they want to hear. And he just doesn't realize that there are repercussions because of that. Demi brings Marcus back over and he says, so what do you guys want? And Demi says, did you or did you not tell me that you never said that you and Natalie were like sisters? And he goes, what I said was that Natalie is the one that has brought it up several times to me that she feels like her and I are like brother and sister. And Venus goes, bitch, you are lying. I literally heard you walk up to the bar and tell her yourself that the two of you were like brother and sister. And then they flash back to a handful of instances where Marcus is indeed saying those exact things. He said it just like the day before to his own brother. I mean, honestly, this dude is a wreck. He is like a walking wound. Very similar to Jax Taylor, honestly. And don't let him convince you that his issues are just because his parents died. Because his issues with integrity and accountability clearly predate him losing his parents. I mean, Marcus just makes his low self-worth evident every time he opens his mouth. I mean, did you hear? The guy is just so desperate for validation. He very obviously still feels like shit inside. So he tells people what they want to hear so they will like him. I mean, this is the same dude that said that the cousins softened him up by complimenting him. Please. But they were complimenting me, so of course we could be friends. I mean, gross. Natalie says, I cannot believe he said that. I am in complete shock. And then Marcus pulls the ultimate slime bag move and he goes, you know, I really don't want to be that guy and play this card, but I'm dealing with the loss of both of my parents. I mean, every single day I'm waking up and just looking for a little bit of happiness. So for me to sit here and pretend like I even give a shit, I don't. And Kimberly should know that. And dear God, I mean gross, just so gross. Venus says, you know, you girls need to stick together because he's playing y'all against each other. And then to camera, he says, you know, Kim puts up with more shit than I ever would. He says, you know, me and Marcus are best friends, but he doesn't care about her feelings. And after 8 months, I mean, this is getting exhausting. And then he looks at the camera and says, and you know, the only explanation is that Marcus must have some bomb dick. Then Marcus starts talking to some girl named McKenna, who is apparently the Sir DJ. And McKenna says, tell me something. Are you in love with that girl? And he says, well, I was, but I think I'm falling out of love. Yeah, I'm falling out of love. And she says, well, why? And she says, well, because she's just not the person I thought she was. And Demi overhears this all and she says, Marcus, stop talking. And then Kimberly gives him the flyby and checks him and says, I am standing right here and I can hear everything you are saying. And as she walks away, Venus comes flying up with the birthday cake. While they're all singing happy birthday, Kimberly finds Natalie and collapses crying into her arms. And then it's time for birthday presents, right? And while Kimberly is literally crying her face off, Chris starts ripping his shirt off and giving Audrey his gift, a balls to the wall lap dance. And she is screaming, you guys. And then he tags his cousin Jason in and she starts screaming even louder. And Audrey looks over and she says, I have no idea why Kim is crying right now, but this is the best birthday ever. And then as Kim storms out of the party, she says, hearing Marcus say that he's falling out of love with me is probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to hear. For me, this just feels like the moment where I need to give up. And scene. And I guess we will soon see if she does. But again, I thought it was good and I can't wait for more. All right, everybody, that about does it for this episode of Generally Speaking. Thank you so much for being here. If you've been watching on YouTube, please make sure you reach out and smash that subscribe button. I would appreciate it. If you've been listening on your favorite streaming platform, please make sure you give us a follow, leave us a 5-star rating, leave us a comment. We would love that. If you'd like to collaborate or have a question you'd like answered on the pod, you can reach me at jennifer@jennifersnook.com. And if you'd like to find me on socials, you can find me on TikTok at This Is Generally Speaking or on Instagram at @TheJenniferSnook. All right, everybody, I have loved spending this time with you. Thank you so much for being here. And until we're together again, everybody, stay rooted in love. Happy holidays, everybody.